I got to start my recording.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't know if Ashok is in here yet, but we don't have a lot of time this morning, so I want to get started.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here this morning, everybody. I want to start with a story. There was once a monk that wanted to find a quiet place to meditate. So he went to a lake and he found a boat. And he got in the boat and he pushed out into the middle of the lake and he got into his stance to meditate and he closed his eyes and he was very peacefully meditating in the lake. And that was good for a while until he was disturbed. Suddenly, there was a crash. Another boat banged into his boat, and he was immediately annoyed. He thought, who would be so inconsiderate to ram their boat into my boat when I'm obviously meditating and want calm and quiet? And then he opened his eyes, and he discovered that the other boat that had banged into his boat was an empty boat. Apparently, another boat had come loose from the shoreline and the wind had blown it out into the lake. And just by random chance, those two boats collided. And he was no longer angry because there was nobody to be angry at.
Mhm.
So that monk changed his perspective. There was only one event, there was only one collision. But what changed before and after he opened his eyes was he changed the story he told himself about that event. So, in effect, that monk flipped a coin. He had initially told one story. He initially looked at one side of the coin, and then he flipped the coin and saw the story in a different light. So today, I'm going to use the coin as a metaphor for how we can change our perspective on something. Specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit about stage fright and how we can use the tension, the anxiety from stage fright as a learning
Yes.
opportunity that will help us both individually grow and also help us to mentor others.
Okay.
Now, I came up with this idea because I was working on a keynote speech on adversity to advantage as a more generic way to think about how we can take our struggles and our challenges and turn them into growth opportunities. Now, if you have a coin within arm's distance, I encourage you to pick it up and feel it physically in your hand and think about that it has two sides and how you can turn the coin and think about how that can be a metaphor. But before I do that, I need a volunteer to help me today. I'm able to control my slides and I'm able to speak, but I can't watch the chat and I can't look for people who might want to speak. There'll be times where I ask a question and I just want people to just to pitch in and just throw out a word or an answer. And you're welcome to, in that case, you're welcome to just turn off your mute, come off mute and share your thought or you're welcome to put it in the chat. So I would like somebody to volunteer to help watch the chat. And if there are things that are put in the chat, to then share those with the group. And also there will be times where I ask you to share, to reflect a little bit and maybe share a few thoughts. And it would be appropriate those times to use the virtual raise your hand function. And because I'm speaking and trying to manage my slides, I cannot also watch for people who raise their hands. So this volunteer can also watch for somebody who's raising their hands and then alert me that there's somebody that wants to share something. So is there anybody that would be willing to
I
be
can do
that
that.
volunteer?
I can watch the chat, Dan.
Great. Thank you, Ashok. Okay. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about what goes on when we experience anxiety, when we're struggling with something like stage fright. It's easy to use a metaphor as a platitude, like flip the coin, or the glass is half full, or the sun will come out tomorrow, or look at the bright side, or find the silver lining. Those words are easy, but they're cheap. They're not actionable. There's a lot of truth contained in those, but they don't really help you know what to do. So today I'm going to give you 3 steps that you can take to transform that anxiety into a learning and growth experience. And I'm going to share, before I do that, I'm going to share 2 additional stories of adversity. And unlike that story about the monk and the boat, these 2 happen to be true. First thing I want to share is about one of my children. And when Felix was a young adult, they went through a terrible experience that the retinas in their eyes began to deteriorate, and they eventually went completely blind. And now Felix is 25 years old and is blind. And I just ask you for a minute to ponder what that might be like. So close your eyes and imagine if you lost your eyesight suddenly, how would you get up from your chair? How would you find the bathroom? How would you find lunch or make dinner? How would you go to the grocery store and find food? How would you do your job? Now you can open your eyes. Does anybody feel any reaction to that description I shared? Go ahead and just blurt out if you want.
Anxiety.
Yeah, it
Yes.
creates anxiety. And Felix,
It's
and
a
I tried to
fear.
imagine, put myself in Felix's shoes, and I just felt, devastated and sad and angry and depressed. And Felix went through all of those things. And eventually, Felix found a program to help teach vocational skills for blind people, and they learned how to use accessibility functions on their computer. They learned how to clean the house, how to organize their living area, be able to clean the house, how to get to the grocery store and buy groceries, all kinds of things, just basic living skills that we take for granted if we have vision. And then Felix came to me and told me that they've decided they were going to enroll in college and feel like they've grown so much from having lost their eyesight, and they're going to enroll in college and pursue special education and become a teacher for the visually impaired. So this devastating thing that happened to Felix helped them find a purpose and a focus with their life. The next thing is my own struggle that I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, attention hyperactivity deficit disorder. And this is after I had completed a college degree, I had completed a master's degree, and I had completed a PhD. And then I learned about ADHD, and I realized everything I've struggled with professionally and academically was related to ADHD. And I was really angry about that. It's like, would it help to know this beforehand? Or I probably would have made different decisions and probably wouldn't have gone to graduate school. I've really understood the struggle I have with ADHD. And then as I learned more about ADHD, I realized everything about ADHD is a coin, and there's two sides to that. So things that you associate with ADHD that are typically thought of as deficits can be assets in different conditions. So like distractibility, I did realize that is a sign of curiosity. I've always loved learning. I'm curious about the world. I like learning new things. And so I can't separate that curiosity from distractibility. And hyperactivity is a problem in some cases, but it's also a sign of being able to do a deep dive and pursue something. So when something's interesting to me, I will learn a lot. I can learn about a new subject. I can find patterns. I can figure out ways to apply a new idea to an old situation. And again, that is part of ADHD. That is the flip side of some of these attributes of ADHD. So let's think about what happens when you're going through a struggle. You're feeling anxiety, like stage fright. Can you just share some thoughts about what's going on inside your body, emotionally, physiologically? Just blurt some things out if they come to mind.
Confused.
That
Confused?
scare.
Uh-huh.
Sweat,
Sweaty.
sweaty.
Sweat. Right. Yeah, I chose this
Okay.
image to represent this kind of state
Oh, I'm scared of.
this state of anxiety, this kind of black cloud above us. This kind of represents confusion and fear. And then there's sort of those intellectual parts of it, and there's emotional parts of it, and there's physiological parts of it. You sweat. Your physiology of your body changes in reaction
Too
to
funny.
that stress. Your heart rate rises, your blood pressure goes up, your body releases stress hormones like cortisol. It releases adrenaline, which gives you energy and focus. Your body diverts blood flow away from your prefrontal cortex of your brain where you do your best thinking. It diverts blood flow away from your digestive system and is diverting blood so your muscles have resources because your body is preparing to deal with that stressful situation. Your body goes into fight or flight reaction. And you might know about fight or flight. You've probably seen it if you watched a nature documentary, and you've probably seen an example of a gazelle, for example, running across the Serengeti in Africa being pursued by a cheetah. That gazelle is experiencing fight or flight. That gazelle is in a dangerous situation and it has to react. And if it doesn't react, it's going to wind up as a meal for that cheetah. We share that type of fight or flight reaction with animals. It's a not a very good reaction when you're standing up to give a speech or when you are in a professional situation and somebody asks you a question and you have to tell them about a project you're working on, or you have to get a status update on a budget or something like that. It's not a very adaptive response. It is highly adaptive and very useful when you are facing an acute stress or acute danger situation. And some of you may have been in a fight or flight situation in the past few days when we're getting some additional snow and the roads are slick and you're driving your car and you start to slide or another car slides out of control coming towards you. You immediately go into fight or flight and your body reacts to get you out of that dangerous situation. This happens faster than you can intellectually think about that. So it's a very adaptive process, a very adaptive function for dealing with a dangerous situation. We would probably all have very short lives if we didn't have that reaction to dealing with dangerous situations. But as I mentioned a minute ago, it's not a very good reaction to other types of stress. It's not a good reaction to dealing with chronic stressful situations or situations that require our thought processes or require our problem-solving capabilities. We can't use those capabilities as well when we're in fight or flight. As I mentioned, our body is diverting resources, blood and oxygen away from those brain functions to other bodily functions. So when you are in a public speaking situation, and many people come to Toastmasters because they experience stage fright. So when you're in a situation like that, your body is reacting with fear in fight or flight as if there's a grizzly bear in the room next to you. Your body is reacting. It's like there's a dangerous situation, but there's no grizzly bear. You were just given a table topics question. Fight or flight response is not needed at that moment, but you may experience fight or flight. So we're going to talk about how you can break out of that fight or flight and then move into a mechanism or modes or processes where you can grow from that. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about neuroscience. And this is another place where the coin is a good metaphor because our nervous system has two major components. There is the autonomic nervous system, that controls involuntary functions. And then there's the somatic nervous system, which controls voluntary functions. And I'd like to hear from you. Can you suggest some bodily functions that are part of the involuntary system? Anybody have some thoughts on that?
Your heart rate,
Your heart rate?
your
Breathing.
breathing rate,
Okay, breathing. What else?
Pain
release
response.
of,
Pain response. I alluded to
release
some
of
of,
hormones.
yes, very good. Yeah, I alluded to some earlier. So many parts of your body are involved in the involuntary response. Breathing, if our breathing wasn't controlled in an involuntary way, we'd forget to breathe when we sleep. That would not be useful. Your hormones, your digestive systems, your blood pressure, your heart rate, diversion of blood flow, allocation of blood flow within the body. All those things are involuntary. And within that involuntary, that autonomic nervous system, there's again two components. A coin flip again. You have the sympathetic division, which could be considered the fight or flight that we've been talking about, and the parasympathetic division, which can be described as rest and digest. And it's described as rest and digest because it's a calmer state. Your body is diverting resources to your digestive system so you can digest your food and you can get the resources from that. You're not in a crisis situation, but it's hard to move from one to the other. And when you're in that rest and digest system, you are able to think and problem solve. You are able to exercise emotional intelligence and emotional regulation. Now, our voluntary nervous system, let's think about that for a minute. What are some bodily functions that are controlled by the voluntary system?
Muscle action, moving your muscles, moving from A to B.
Okay. Yeah, controlling your body movements. There are a couple of things mentioned there. What else was there?
When it comes to walking,
Walking. Yeah.
when you're going, you say, I want to go across to the sink. I want to go to the wall. But the actions, like you have to move this leg and foot, then you move that leg. There are certain things that are automatic. You don't actually think of moving your legs. You go, that seems to be automatic.
Yep, great example. Thank you. Now, if we'd imagine we made a Venn diagram of the autonomic nervous system, the involuntary, and the somatic nervous system, the voluntary, is there a point of overlap? What would be in
Right.
that polygon in the middle of the overlap?
Well, I would think your walking, whatever you do, would be part of that.
Well,
You
walking, I would say,
go,
is more voluntary. There's
yeah,
one thing I'm looking
No,
for
it's
that's
breathing.
yeah, just
breathing, breathing.
you're actually,
Or
you don't
blinking
actually
your
think,
eyes too.
Yep, your eyes. What I was looking for is breathing, because that is
okay,
the one of the unique body functions that overlaps.
yeah,
Like I mentioned, your body controls the breathing when you're sleeping, but you can override your automatic breathing response with
yeah,
voluntary actions. And so that is a key thing to help us break the grip of fight or flight. So I want you to do a breathing exercise with me. I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath. Okay, we have 20 minutes. Thank you, Ashok. Take a deep breath, and I will count for the inhale. So inhale for the duration I count, and then I will ask you to hold that breath, and I will count again. Then I will ask you to do a long exhalation, and I will count again, and then ask you to hold that count again, and then we'll repeat the cycle. So take a deep breath. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Now, what did I do? Did I do something that was unexpected? Some of you probably heard the box breathing technique, and that is a count of four for every step, but I did something different. What was that?
Went to six.
Hold our breath.
Yeah, I did the exhale to 6. And you can use the box breathing with a count of 4 all the way around. It is a calming thing and it helps you focus. But the key thing I did there with the exhale longer is because when you have your exhale is longer than your inhale, you are physiologically stimulating your vagus nerve and you are sending a message to your nervous. I got a lot of dogs barking here today. You are physiologically sending a message to your nervous system that you are safe. So you might be given a table topics question and you're panic and you're anxious. If you have a deep breath and a long exhale, you are telling your nervous system you're not in danger. You don't need fight or flight right now. I'm going to give you some other examples
yes,
of a feedback loop that you can use as a feedback loop to signal to your nervous system. So one is the breathing practice. Second is havening. Havening involves things like rubbing your hands together, or you can put your hands on your shoulders and rub down your biceps to your elbows like this, or you can rub your face, your cheeks, your forehead, or you can have a loved one do those things for you. Or you can do progressive muscle relaxation. And some of you may be familiar with this technique that you may have experienced this in a meditation, either a live meditation, a led meditation, or an app, or if you've listened to a program or a podcast that helps you relax and go to sleep, they'll say, imagine stimulating your toes, wiggle your toes, now relax your toes. Now imagine think of your feet, wiggle your feet, move your feet, now relax your feet. Now think of your ankles, and then progressively work your way up the body and your arms through your torso to your head until you've thought about all parts of your body and you consciously think about relaxing them.
yeah,
Another technique is vocal stimulation, humming or singing. Another one is sensory grounding. Has anybody ever told you, hey, you need to chill out, go outside and touch some grass? Now that's a tongue-in-cheek way of telling you to use neuroscience to hack your nervous system. And what is happening there is sensory grounding. If you go outside and you go for a walk in nature you have bare feet and you walk in the grass, or you go for a walk in the trees and the flowers and you feel the fresh air and the sunshine and you hear the birds chirping, that helps lower your heart rate. It helps lower your blood pressure. 10 or 15 minutes of an activity like that, and your brain waves will change from an agitated state into a more calm state where you're able to think and process and problem solve. Another thing you can do is chew gum. And what happens when you chew gum is you stimulate your mouth to produce saliva. And when you have the saliva coming down your throat, your body thinks it's time to digest. Now, all of these sensory activities have the same commonality, have a commonality in that they are physiological ways that you can signal to your nervous system that you're safe. You don't need to be in fight or flight. The body does not receive these physical stimuli if you are in a dangerous situation. So knowing that you're not in a dangerous situation and you want to calm down your fight or flight reaction, you can undertake these activities yourself. You can hack your nervous system. Now, I showed the coin again here because this is another opportunity that we can think about flipping the coin, that we're flipping from this agitated, anxious state to a calmer state. But the coin metaphor also has the added benefit that the coin has a head and a tail, which is a good metaphor for our body because on our head, we have our higher level intellectual process, our cognitive functions, and our ability to regulate our emotions, our emotional intelligence. And the other side, we have tails. That's our body. That's our emotional state. That's our physiological state. It's impossible to separate the two sides of the coin from each other. You cannot separate the heads and the tail. Likewise, you cannot separate your cognitive abilities from your physiological abilities.
Yeah.
Where human beings don't exist one or the other. We exist with both at all times. So we have to be able to manage, understand that we can't separate those. We have to be able to manage them. Now, second activity for transforming our adversity into an advantage or growing from stage fright is I like journaling, and I like a hard copy journal. So I got a copy of journal, and I've got a bunch of journals on my desk right here. Like here's one I'm writing in right now. I like the hard copy physical journal. Writing in a journal helps you process your thoughts. It slows your thought process down, and it also provides an added level of physical stimulus, kind of like the havening. You physically holding a pen and scratching across paper. There's a physical stimulus that your nervous system is picking up. And again, it's giving a signal that you're doing something safe. You would not be doing this physical activity if you're not in a safe situation. So writing a journal is useful. But then what do you write about? Well, you can just write about, whatever emotions you're feeling, and that's writing about will help you process that. But I'm going to give you some questions that are specifically written to help you transform that anxiety into growth. And the questions are worded as if I'm asking them to you, or if you're asking them of yourself. But you can change the wording to either use them for self-reflection, in a way to use them as self-mentoring, or you can word them as if you're addressing them to somebody else to help a mentee deal with their stage fright and help them grow with their public speaking and leadership skills. So the questions are, what does this adversity teach? Who am I becoming because of this adversity? And where could this experience be advantageous? So specifically with public speaking, what am I learning? What skills am I going to learn from experiencing this stage fright? Who can I become because I experienced this discomfort with speaking? And where could this experience be advantageous? So I'd like you to come off mute if you would like. And I would like to hear from some of you. Share your initial reaction to these questions. It's in regard to public speaking. How would you answer these questions in regard to your own experience in public speaking? Anybody?
Yeah.
I think for me, it helps me breathe before I present a work to make sure that I'm relaxed and my whole body is engaged into the topic that I know how to deliver the topic, but sometimes this fear can interfere in me delivering the message. So I try to relax. I try to breathe before I get into either a stage or to present in Zoom to my team at work.
Great. Thanks, Tessa. Anybody else?
Okay. So the only time
I feel that it really helps one focus more on what, if it is a speech or a presentation, what you're going to speaking of. So nervousness adds focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got a comment.
Yeah, so that's a really good point, David. That having a little bit of nervousness gives you adrenaline, and one of the things that you get from the adrenaline is focus, attentiveness, and vigilance. So a little bit's okay, as long as you're able to recognize that it needs to be a moderate amount. But certainly, yeah, that nervousness does help provide focus. That's a really good point. Anybody else have a?
I had a comment.
Okay.
It's a very minor situation. During the meetings, we have our sessions of the table topics. And I'm one of those quieter people. I'm not a bit allowed to know everything. And sometimes a question is asked randomly, and it's about a topic for which I have little or no knowledge. And all of a sudden, am I going to make a fool of myself, or am I going to admit, I'm sorry, but this topic is really something I really don't know anything about? I have situations like that. Sometimes my hearing is not the very best, and sometimes I hear people try to talk about somebody's speech, and you really can't say anything, and you have to admit. And sometimes I find it's more an embarrassment than abject fear that you're going to run to save your life. But it's something I find that sometimes you're being asked to give comment on some topic that you just don't happen to have any knowledge of. So if you ask a question about some football game, make some comment, well, I'm not into football. I said, I just can't say anything. And I have to admit, and that's my escape, that I cannot say it. I just have to say, sorry, this is a topic for which I have nothing meaningful to say. I think, what would your opinion be on this?
I like that you mentioned embarrassment, because you could process embarrassment through this framework. Like, what does this embarrassment teach me? Who am I becoming because of this embarrassment? And it could be that I'm someone who's I'm going to learn how to regulate emotions a little bit better. I'm not going to be someone who lets embarrassment stop me from going ahead. I know I'm going to succeed sometimes. I'm going to stumble sometimes. I'm not going to let that stop me. I want to move on to the next step. So I promised you 3 steps. And so we got the next part is taking these skills and putting them into a framework for consistent and systematic growth. Now, when I finished my PhD, I did not feel very good. I felt like the struggle of doing a PhD exposed weakness. I felt really weak. It was a struggle to finish a PhD with ADHD. As I processed that or thought about it and reflected on it over the years, I realized that's not really a fair statement to myself. First of all, I did finish, so that's an accomplishment. But then I think about, well, what is a weakness? A weakness is just a skill that I don't have, or it's a skill that I'm not very good at, or it's a skill that I will never be able to do with something beyond my capabilities. And I show this graphic of a weightlifter because I imagine going to the gym. And there's a time I didn't like to go to the gym. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't feel like I was very good at exercising. So I hired a trainer, and the trainer helped me overcome those weaknesses by helping me learn those skills. He taught me new exercises. He taught me ways to strengthen and grow from those exercises consistently. And also I realized no matter how many times I go to the gym or how hard I work out, there are just weights that are always going to be beyond my capability. I'm just one human being. There's nothing wrong with having skills that you haven't mastered or having things that are beyond your capability. So with that in mind, I want to move on to the next stage, which is 5 steps for how you can grow from learning these new skills. So again, I don't think of these as weaknesses. Think of them as new skills. View them as opportunities. Put them on a to-do list. address them one at a time, make a deliberate practice of them, and use mentoring when needed. I've never had a lot of stage fright about standing up in front of a live audience and speaking. Even going back to when I first had to do presentations, like, I don't know, in 7th grade in English class. But I've discovered that I do have stage fright in that I don't like to make videos and I don't like to share them with people. And I would like to have speaking opportunities outside of Toastmasters. And I know that in order to do that, I need to make content, I need to make videos, and I need to put those online. I need to share those with people. And I have the worst stage fright for that. So I've come up with a program for this. So as during the introduction, Ashok mentioned that I'm president of Power Talk Toastmasters. Our club has a monthly newsletter that's online and goes out in an email. First item in the newsletter every month is the president's column. So I have to write a little column every month. And I decided this year, I'm going to make a video. I'm not going to write a column. I'm going to make a video. July 1st came and it was time for the first newsletter. And I was gripped in fear, stage fright. I didn't do it. I procrastinated it. I chose rather, in my fight or flight, I chose not to fight through it. I chose to flee from it. And I said, I'm not going to do that again. And so from August through January so far, I've made 6 videos. I make a video, I edit it, I maybe have to do it 2 or 3 times. I upload it to a YouTube channel. I send a link to the video to our newsletter editor. She puts it in the newsletter. It goes out to anybody at that link, and then see my video. Scares the hell out of me. But I've taken the system, and I know that if I keep doing this consistently, it's going to become to feel normal to me. So now this framework I've given, these 5 steps, can you think of where we employ this type of a structure in Toastmasters? Anybody just come off mute and tell me.
Giving a speech.
Yeah, giving a speech.
I'm with you, Daniel. As a PQD, you have like so many things to do. Sometimes it's overwhelms you. Then I try to, like what you said, try to be cognizant of, okay, it's okay to not do everything and calm down and then do one at a time, like what you put in the list. Sometimes writing down and then tackling them helps me.
Yeah. So this is, I'm keeping this in mind as a way, we can help mentor others. It's like, you don't have to master everything at once. We're going to do one thing at a time. After I put together this list of 5 steps, I realized this is the approach used in speechcraft and pathways. If all these activities, they're all opportunities, they're all defined, you do them one at a time, you make a deliberate practice, and you access mentoring as needed. So we're already doing this. We just maybe didn't recognize that these things are already baked into the Toastmasters experience. So I want to wrap up by coming back to the coin. And as I mentioned earlier, it's easy to think of the coin as a cheap metaphor if you don't have actions, a way to build on it. And it's easy to flip the coin in some cases, like the monk in the boat, and say, oh, well, I misunderstood the situation. There's nobody to be mad at. Flipping the coin to go from growth, if we're going to go from anxiety or stage fright to growth, takes more time, but there's a way to do it. I hope now that you understand a little bit about the neuroscience and of what's going on with our bodies when we experience that stressful situation, and the ways that you can break that anxiety down and see how these are skills, and keep in mind the endpoint of where those skills will lead you, and then have a program of how you can build on those skills and incorporate growth through those. If you'd like to share any feedback with me, my number is there, my email is there. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts or feedback following today's program. So thank you, everybody, for your participation and for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was phenomenal. So this is the need of the hour, I feel like.